What are the legislative rules regarding the press corps? In Joint Rule 32, it deals with press rules. And Joint Rule 32A provides that any person who desires privileges of an accredited press representative is required to make an application to the President pro tem of the Senate and the Speaker of the Assembly. And that application constitutes compliance with any respective rules of the Assembly or the Senate regarding registration of news correspondence. The application has to be authenticated in a manner that's satisfactory to the Standing Committee of the Capital Correspondence Association of California, and that Capital Correspondence Association sees that the occupation of seats and desks in the Senate and Assembly chambers are confined to bona fide correspondents of reputable standing in their business who represent the news media. And it's the duty of the Standing Committee at its discretion to report any violation of accredited press privileges to the Assembly Speaker or the Senate President pro tem. In addition, persons who are engaged in other occupations whose chief attention is not given to newspaper correspondence or to news associations are not entitled to the different privileges accorded to the accredited press representatives. The press list that's published on the Assembly and Senate websites is a list of only those persons who have been authenticated by the Standing Committee of the Capital Correspondence Association of California. An accreditation may be granted to any bona fide correspondent of a reputable standing who's employed by a periodic publication of general circulation if the applicant is employed on a regular basis in the capital area to prepare articles that deal with state government and politics, and that the publication is not an organ or organization that is involved in legislative advocacy. Also, the joint rules provide that the press seats and the desks in the chambers of the Assembly and Senate are under the control of the Standing Committee of Correspondence, but it's subject to the approval and supervision of the Assembly Speaker and the Senate Committee on Rules. Press cards are issued by the President pro tem of the Senate and the Assembly Speaker, and those only go to correspondents who have been properly accredited. In addition, an accredited member of the Capital Correspondence Association of California may not, for compensation, perform any service for a state constitutional officer or member of their staff, and not for any state agency, not for the legislature, not for any candidate for state office, not for any state officer, and not for any person who's registered or performing as a legislative advocate. Also, an accredited member of the Capital Correspondence Association who violates any of the rules is subject to specified penalties. Any member of the Standing Committee of the Capital Correspondence Association of California may propose that the committee make an inquiry to determine if an association member has violated any of the provisions of the joint rule. And upon receipt of a signed written notice from any association member of that association member's belief that another association member may have violated any of the provisions of the joint rules, then the Standing Committee of the Capital Correspondence Association is required to commence an inquiry into that possible violation. In addition, the Assembly and Senate rules have provisions related to press participation. On the Senate side, we have Senate Rule 21.8 titled Press Participation. And Senate Rule 21.8 provides that accredited press representatives may not be excluded from any public legislative meeting or hearing, and that they may not be prohibited from taking photographs or televising or recording the committee or the hearings of that house, subject to three main or a couple of provisions. Number one, this rule extends to all public legislative meetings. Lights may be used only when cameras are filming. Every effort should be made to set up filming equipment before the hearing or the floor session begins. The committee chair or the Assembly or Senate, in this case, the Senate Committee on Rules has to be notified as far in advance as possible that a recording or television camera will be present and filming. To the extent practical, flash cameras are not supposed to be used in committee hearings or floor sessions. And photographs are supposed to be taken in an orderly and expeditious manner so that they don't cause any inconvenience to a committee or to the senators in the chamber. Now, the Senate Rule 21.8 also provides that the chair of a committee may request any person to relocate or to move an object or discontinue the use of their equipment if it disrupts the proceedings or creates a potential danger or substantially obstructs the views of members of the committee or members of the public. And in the case that any person fails to respond to a request of the chair, then the committee may do so by majority vote, require what the chair has requested. On the Assembly side, it's Assembly Rule 25 that's titled Public Legislative Meetings. And Assembly Rule 25 provides that accredited press representatives and the public shall not be excluded from any public legislative meeting or hearing, and they shall not be prohibited from taking photographs or televising or recording a committee or House proceeding. The Assembly Committee on Rules is required to adopt reasonable rules regarding access to public legislative meetings and hearing spaces. And that rule must include the placement and use of equipment for recording or broadcasting so as to minimize disruption of the legislative proceedings. Also, the rules are required to grant priority to accredited press representatives in allocating access to public legislative meetings and hearings. And finally, legislative meetings are required to comply with the provisions related to the public recording of legislative meetings dealing with Prop 54 and Chapter 163 of the statutes of 2018, the resolution that set forth compliance with Prop 54 in the Assembly.